1. Greedo is the definition of a small-time villain in Star Wars. A Rodian bounty hunter, he worked under Jabba the Hutt and was tasked with capturing Han Solo for failing to pay his debts. Instead of being clever or dangerous, Greedo walked right into the most humiliating moment possible, his face-off in the Mos Eisley Cantina. Whether you believe Han shot first or not, Greedo's overconfidence cost him his life in seconds. He had no real reputation beyond being another one of Jabba's disposable thugs. Unlike Boba Fett or Cad Bane, Greedo lacked any real tactical ability or combat skill. His only power came from pointing a blaster at Han, and even that didn't work. He's remembered more as a meme than a real threat, representing how low-level bounty hunters were in the galaxy's underworld. Greedo's death showed how dangerous Han was compared to someone so incompetent. That's why Greedo easily lands at the bottom of the ranking, the weakest villain on this entire list. 2. Watto isn't a fighter or a force user, but his villainy comes from greed, cruelty, and manipulation. A junk dealer on Tatooine, Watto owned slaves, including Anakin Skywalker and his mother Shmi. He was obsessed with money and gambling, treating others as tools for his own profit. What makes Watto dangerous is not physical strength, but his willingness to control lives through debt and slavery. He prided himself on being immune to Jedi mind tricks, which made him one of the few characters to resist Jedi influence. Still, compared to warriors and Sith lords, Watto doesn't stand a chance. He's not someone who could survive a duel or win a battle. His power was limited to his shop, his greed, and the desperation of those around him. Watto symbolizes how cruel and corrupt the galaxy was outside the Republic's reach. He's not terrifying, but he played a key role in shaping Anakin's childhood through slavery. That lasting impact makes him memorable, even though he ranks extremely low in overall villain strength. 3. DJ, introduced in The Last Jedi, is less of a traditional villain and more of an opportunistic traitor. Played by Benicio del Toro, DJ is a slicer, basically a master hacker, who Finn and Rose recruit to help infiltrate the First Order's ship. At first, he seems quirky and untrustworthy, but the real betrayal comes when he sells them out for money. Unlike Sith Lords or bounty hunters, DJ has no combat skills, force powers, or military command. His entire strength lies in exploiting others when it benefits him. DJ represents the darker side of the galaxy, where survival and profit mean more than loyalty or morality. He's not evil in the grand scheme, but his selfishness had devastating consequences, leading to the First Order attacking the Resistance. This made him more impactful than weaker. Comedic villains like Greedo, yet still nowhere near as dangerous as the galaxy's true threats. DJ is a reminder that sometimes the biggest betrayal doesn't come from powerful enemies. It comes from people who sell you out when you need them most. 4. Nute Gunray. Nute Gunray, leader of the Trade Federation, is the perfect example of a cowardly villain who hides behind power and armies rather than facing danger himself. He played a crucial role in the Phantom Menace, blockading Naboo and secretly working with Darth Sidious. Despite holding political and military influence, Nute was always more of a puppet than a real threat. He commanded droid armies but lacked the bravery or skill to fight on his own. Whenever things went wrong, he panicked, fled, or begged for mercy. His villainy comes not from strength but from greed, corruption, and his willingness to sacrifice innocent lives for profit. Even though he served as a key pawn in Palpatine's rise to power, Nute Gunray was easily disposable. By the time of Revenge of the Sith, he had outlived his usefulness and was eliminated without much effort. While Nute is far more influential than Greedo or Watto, his cowardly nature keeps him among the weakest villains in Star Wars history. 5. General Hux. General Hux of the First Order is one of the most entertaining yet ultimately weak villains in the sequel trilogy. On the surface, he appears ruthless, commanding Starkiller Base, and giving fiery speeches about destroying the New Republic. He had authority, soldiers, and fear on his side. But underneath the bluster, Hux was insecure, jealous, and constantly overshadowed by Kaylo Ran. His greatest weapon was manipulation within the First Order, not true military brilliance. Over time, he devolved into comic relief, often humiliated and mocked. Hux's downfall came when he betrayed the First Order not out of morality, but pure spite against Kaylo Ran. That move exposed him as selfish and small-minded, far from the genius commander he pretended to be. While he controlled terrifying weapons, he himself was never dangerous. Compared to true masterminds like Tarkin or Sidious, Hux was a loud, ambitious pawn who got in way over his head. That's why he lands so low in the ranking. He looked powerful, but never truly was. 6. Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma was marketed as the Chrome Stormtrooper of the sequel trilogy, meant to be the First Order's elite enforcer. Tall, intimidating, and commanding with authority, she looked like the ultimate soldier. But when it came to actual impact, Phasma fell flat. Her screen time was minimal, and every time she appeared, she was quickly defeated. Despite her armor being nearly indestructible and her combat skills being above average, she failed to establish herself as a true threat. Finn, a stormtrooper who had barely begun his journey as a fighter, managed to beat her twice. Symbolically, Phasma represented the First Order's obsession with image over substance. She looked terrifying, but delivered little. Expanded material in books and comics showed her as more ruthless and cunning, but in the films, she became a classic case of wasted potential. She's stronger than background villains like Greedo or Hux, but compared to Sith Lords or Force users, she doesn't belong in the same conversation. Phasma was style without substance, remembered more for her shiny armor than any meaningful villainy. 7. Cad Bane. Cad Bane is one of the most iconic bounty hunters in Star Wars, especially from the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch. Unlike comedic villains such as Greedo, Bane is legitimately dangerous. He's a master gunslinger with lightning reflexes, deadly accuracy, and an arsenal of gadgets that make him capable of going toe-to-toe with Jedi. His cold, ruthless personality made him a true threat across the galaxy. What separates Cad Bane from weaker bounty hunters is his cunning. He wasn't afraid to challenge powerful opponents and often outsmarted the Republic and Jedi. Still, as skilled as he was, he remained human. Against the raw power of Sith Lords or Force users, Cad Bane couldn't keep up. His showdown with Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett highlighted both his resilience and his limits. He was feared in the underworld, but his reach never extended beyond mercenary work. Cad Bane is stronger than characters like Phasma or Hux, but he remains outclassed when compared to those who command the Force or rule empires. 8. Jango Fett. Jango Fett was the template for the Republic's entire clone army, a legendary bounty hunter, and the father of Boba Fett. Unlike Phasma, who looked intimidating without much payoff, Jango lived up to his reputation. His combat skills, advanced Mandalorian armor, jetpack, and twin blasters made him one of the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. He even held his own against Jedi, defeating Coleman Trebor instantly and battling Obi-Wan Kenobi to a near standstill. However, Jango's greatest strength, his confidence, was also his downfall. In Attack of the Clones, he faced Jedi Master Mace Windu and was quickly killed, showing that even the best bounty hunters were no match for elite Jedi. His legacy, though, was massive. The entire clone army and his son Boba both carried on his name. Jango ranks above Cad Bane thanks to his influence and combat skills, but he still couldn't touch the galaxy's most powerful Force users. His legend is undeniable, but his ceiling was reached the moment he underestimated a true Jedi Master. 9. Boba Fett. Boba Fett is one of the most legendary names in Star Wars history, but his actual power is often debated. Introduced in The Empire Strikes Back, Boba quickly became a fan favorite because of his armor, mystery, and calm menace. Unlike his father Jango, Boba relied heavily on reputation. In the original trilogy, he captured Han Solo with relative ease, but met a laughably weak end when a blind Han accidentally knocked him into the Sarlacc pit. Expanded material and later canon stories like The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett restored his credibility, showing him as a hardened warrior and leader. Still, Boba's greatest strength has always been survival. He endured countless near-death experiences and lived to carve out his place as a crime lord. Compared to Sith Lords, he was never truly powerful, but as a bounty hunter, he was one of the deadliest. Boba ranks slightly above Jango, not because he was stronger in combat, but because he survived longer and cemented his legacy in the galaxy. 10. Count Dooku, Darth Turanus. Count Dooku, also known as Darth Turanus, was far more than just a Sith apprentice. Once a respected Jedi Master, he turned to the dark side under Darth Sidious and became the political and military leader of the Separatists. Unlike weaker villains who relied on armies or deception, Dooku was an extraordinary lightsaber duelist and one of the most skilled Force users of his era. He defeated Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker multiple times before his downfall. His mastery of Makashi, a dueling style built for precision, made him nearly unbeatable in one-on-one combat. However, despite his immense talent, Dooku was ultimately a pawn. Palpatine used him to start the Clone Wars, only to discard him once Anakin was ready to fully embrace the dark side. His death at Anakin's hands in Revenge of the Sith symbolized how even great Sith were tools for Sidious's grand plan. Count Dooku ranks far above bounty hunters and soldiers, but he falls short compared to Sith legends like Darth Vader and Palpatine. 11. Asajj Ventress. Asajj Ventress is one of the most underrated villains in the Star Wars universe. Introduced in the Clone Wars, she was a Dathomirian assassin trained in the dark side by Count Dooku. Dual-wielding red lightsabers, she quickly became one of the most dangerous fighters in the galaxy. Ventress's strength was not only in her combat skills, but also her resilience. Time and again, she survived betrayal, defeat, and abandonment. After Dooku cast her aside, she returned to her Night Sister roots, blending sorcery with her dark side powers. What makes Ventress unique is that she wasn't just another Sith pawn. She had her own ambitions and loyalties, often working as a mercenary or bounty hunter after leaving Dooku. Still, she could never surpass her master or the top-tier Sith. Against Jedi like Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, she often lost despite pushing them to their limits. Ventress sits above bounty hunters like Boba Fett, but below the great Sith Lords. Her story adds tragic depth to the Clone Wars era, making her a memorable yet mid-tier villain in terms of raw power. 12. Kaylo Ran. Ben Solo. Kaylo Ran is one of the most conflicted villains in Star Wars. As the son of Han Solo and Leia Organa, he inherited both the Skywalker bloodline and the burden of expectation. Under Supreme Leader Snoke's influence, he embraced the dark side, desperate to live up to Darth Vader's legacy. Kylo's power in the Force was undeniable. His ability to freeze blaster bolts mid-air and his skill with a lightsaber made him a formidable opponent. However, his greatest weakness was his emotional instability. Unlike Vader or Sidious, who wielded their power with control, Kylo was constantly torn between light and dark. He defeated some opponents easily, yet struggled against Rey, who was new to her training. As Supreme Leader after killing Snoke, Kylo gained immense influence, but his lack of focus made him vulnerable. Eventually, his redemption as Ben Solo proved he was never fully committed to villainy. Kylo ranks above characters like Ventress, due to his raw Force potential, but his inconsistency keeps him from reaching the true power of Vader or Palpatine. 13. General Grievous was designed to be a Jedi killing machine, and in many ways he lived up to the role. A cyborg warlord with cybernetic enhancements, he could wield 4 lightsabers at once, each taken from slain Jedi. As Supreme Commander of the Separatist droid army, Grievous terrified the galaxy during the Clone Wars. His agility, strength, and unorthodox fighting style allowed him to overwhelm many Jedi in battle. However, Grievous had a fatal flaw. Despite his enhancements, he lacked the Force. Against skilled Jedi Masters, that weakness became clear. Obi-Wan Kenobi proved this when he outdueled and destroyed him in Revenge of the Sith. Grievous's reputation was built on intimidation, numbers, and strategy, rather than true mastery of the Force. He stands far above bounty hunters like Cad Bane or Phasma, as he was capable of mass destruction and fear. Yet compared to Sith Lords like Dooku or Vader, he falls short. Grievous was a terrifying villain, but ultimately he was a tool in Sidious's larger plan, never the ultimate threat himself. 14. Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon, introduced in The Mandalorian, is one of the most cunning Imperial remnants after the fall of the Empire. Unlike comedic villains like Hux, Gideon was cold, calculating, and ruthless. His strength came not from the Force, but from his leadership and access to advanced technology. Commanding remnants of the Imperial military, he terrified entire systems and hunted the child, Grogu, with ruthless determination. What made Gideon especially dangerous was his ambition. He wielded the Darksaber, a legendary Mandalorian weapon, and used it both as a symbol of power and as a tool to intimidate his enemies. Still, Gideon's true threat level was limited. Against skilled Force users like Din Djarin with allies, he was eventually defeated. His strength came more from manipulation, resources, and fear than personal combat ability. Gideon ranks higher than non-Force villains like Phasma or Gunray, but nowhere near Sith Lords like Dooku or Vader. His cunning and charisma made him a standout modern villain, but in raw power he never broke into the galaxy's elite. 15. Darth Maul. Darth Maul is one of the most iconic villains in Star Wars history, remembered instantly for his red and black tattoos, double-bladed lightsaber, and acrobatic fighting style. Trained as a Sith assassin under Darth Sidious, Maul was the embodiment of rage and precision. In The Phantom Menace, he killed Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and nearly defeated Obi-Wan Kenobi, proving himself a lethal warrior. His survival after being cut in half showed his sheer willpower and connection to the dark side. Maul returned in The Clone Wars and Rebels, carving out an empire of crime and manipulation. Unlike Dooku, who relied on politics, Maul thrived in chaos, building armies through fear. Still, despite his skill, Maul was never Sidious's equal. He lacked the cunning and force mastery of the greatest Sith. His obsession with revenge against Obi-Wan defined his life and ultimately led to his downfall. Darth Maul ranks higher than Gideon or Grievous due to his force powers and dueling skill, but he remains below galactic titans like Vader and Sisious. 16. Supreme Leader Snoke. Supreme Leader Snoke was introduced as the mysterious and terrifying head of the First Order, a dark side wielder who commanded massive fleets and influenced Kaylo Ran's descent. Towering and disfigured, Snoke appeared to be the next great Sith-level villain, capable of effortlessly tossing opponents around with the Force and bridging minds across the galaxy. His greatest strength was his psychological manipulation. He broke down Kaylo Ran while luring Rey into his throne room, showing incredible mastery of the dark side. However, Snoke's legacy quickly collapsed when it was revealed he was merely a puppet created and controlled by Palpatine from Exegol. This revelation downgraded his status from a true dark side master to a disposable clone. His death at the hands of Kaylo Ran further highlighted his vulnerability. Still, Snoke ranks higher than Grievous or Maul due to his sheer force powers and command of the First Order. While he wasn't the mastermind fans expected, his short reign left a lasting mark, making him a powerful but ultimately limited villain in the saga. 17. Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. Darth Vader is arguably the most iconic villain in cinematic history. Once Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one of Jedi prophecy, he fell to the dark side under Darth Sidious and became the Empire's ruthless enforcer. Encased in black armor and sustained by machinery, Vader was both terrifying and tragic. His mastery of the Force made him nearly unstoppable. He could crush throats from across a room, deflect blaster fire, and overpower Jedi with sheer strength. His lightsaber skills combined with his tactical brilliance allowed him to hunt down and destroy the Jedi Order. Vader's fear factor was unmatched. He didn't just command troops, he inspired terror across the galaxy. However, his dependence on life support limited his agility, preventing him from reaching his full potential. Still, Vader's raw power, influence, and legacy put him far above most villains. While Palpatine may have been the mastermind, Vader was the face of the Empire and one of the greatest threats the galaxy ever faced. 18. Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine. Darth Sidious, also known as Emperor Palpatine, was the ultimate mastermind of the Star Wars saga. Unlike Vader's brute force, Palpatine specialized in manipulation, politics, and long-term planning. He orchestrated the fall of the Republic, engineered the Clone Wars, and crowned himself Emperor, ruling with absolute power. His Force mastery was devastating, unleashing Force lightning, performing dark rituals, and outmaneuvering the Jedi Council. His greatest strength was deception. He hid in plain sight as Chancellor, controlling both sides of the war until the galaxy bowed to him. Even after his defeat in Return of the Jedi, his influence endured. Sidious ranks above nearly every villain due to his unmatched political genius and dark side mastery. He wasn't just a warrior, he was the architect of galactic domination. No villain shaped history as much as Palpatine, standing as the embodiment of the dark side's true potential. Calculated, patient, and utterly ruthless. 19. Darth Plagueis, legends referenced in canon. Darth Plagueis remains one of the most mysterious Sith lords. Known mainly from Palpatine's chilling tale, Plagueis was said to have mastered the ability to manipulate life and death. He could prevent people from dying and bend the Force in ways no Sith before him had achieved. His obsession with immortality and ultimate control set him apart from others. But his fatal flaw was arrogance. He trusted his apprentice, Darth Sidious, who ultimately killed him in his sleep. Despite his immense knowledge, Plagueis never achieved true immortality. Much of his story is in legends, but his influence over Palpatine makes him one of the most important villains in galactic history. He ranks higher than Maul, Grievous, or Snoke due to his near-mythical powers, though dying before completing his work keeps him short of the very top. Plagueis symbolizes the Sith cycle of ambition and betrayal, proving that even the most powerful can fall. 20. Exegol Palpatine, Rise of Skywalker. At the very top of the ranking sits Palpatine in his resurrected Exegol form. Though controversial, this incarnation of Sidious was godlike in scale and power. Revived through dark side cloning and Sith rituals, he commanded the Final Order, a fleet of planet-destroying star destroyers capable of wiping out entire systems. His raw dark side energy was immense. He could drain Rey and Ben Solo's life force and unleash Force lightning strong enough to disable an entire fleet. This version of Palpatine combined political dominance, military might, and supernatural Force abilities. What makes him the strongest villain is the combination of scale and raw destructive power. No other Sith or Warlord wielded such devastation at once. While Rey's victory restored balance, Exegol Palpatine stands as the peak of Sith power, the strongest and most dangerous villain in Star Wars history.